Jeffrey Dahmer. Part 2.
Late teens and early 20s. First murder.
In 1978, 3 weeks after he graduated, Dahmer killed his first person. On June 18, Dahmer picked up a hitchhiker named Stephen Mark Hicks, who was almost 19 years old. Dahmer used the excuse of wanting to drink to get the young man to come to his house. Hicks, who was hitchhiking to a rock concert in Chippewa Lake Park, Ohio, agreed to go with Dahmer to his house, because Dahmer said they could have a few beers together since he would have the house to himself. Dahmer said that seeing Hicks standing by the road bare-chested made him feel sexual. But when Hicks started talking about girls, he knew that any sexual advances he made would be turned down. After a few hours of talking, drinking, and listening to music, Hicks wanted to leave and I didn't want him to leave. So Dahmer beat him to death with a 10-pound dumbbell. He later said that he hit Hicks twice with the dumbbell from behind while Hicks was sitting in a chair. When Hicks passed out, Dahmer strangled him to death with the bar of the dumbbell. He then took Hicks' clothes off, explored his chest with his hands, and masturbated while standing over the body. After a few hours, Dahmer dragged the body down to the basement. The next day, Dahmer took Hicks' body apart in his basement. He later buried the body parts in a shallow grave in his backyard. A few weeks later, he dug up the bones and cut the flesh off of them. He then mixed the flesh with acid and flushed the mixture down the toilet. He used a sledgehammer to break up the bones and spread them in the woods behind the family home.
College and Army service.
6 weeks after Hicks was killed, Dahmer's father and his fiancée went back to his house and found Jeffrey living there by himself. That August, Dahmer went to Ohio State University to study business. Dahmer's only semester at OSU was a waste of time, mostly because he drank too much for most of the semester. He failed Introduction to Anthropology, Classical Civilizations, and Administrative Science. The only class Dahmer did well in was riflery. He got a B in that class. His overall grade point average was 0.45 out of 4. When Lionel surprised his son, he found his room full of empty liquor bottles. Dahmer dropped out of OSU after only 3 months, even though his father had already paid for the second term. In 1979, a picture of Dahmer was taken in West Germany. In 1981, he was kicked out of the military because he drank when he wasn't on duty. On his father's advice, Dahmer joined the U.S. Army in January 1979. He did basic training at Fort McClellan in Anniston, Alabama, and then went to Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio, Texas, to become a medical specialist. While he was stationed at Fort Sam Houston, he was sometimes told off for being drunk. One time, Dahmer's whole platoon was punished for disobedience, and Dahmer got a very bad beating from his other recruits. On July 13, 1979, Dahmer was sent to Baumholder, West Germany, to serve as a combat medic in the 2nd Battalion, 68th Armored Regiment, 8th Infantry Division. According to published reports, in his first year of service, Dahmer was an average or slightly above average soldier. Dahmer's performance in the Army went downhill because he drank too much. In March 1981, he was deemed unfit for military service and discharged from the Army. He was given an honorable discharge because his superiors didn't think any problems he had in the Army would carry over to civilian life. On March 24, 1981, Dahmer was given a debriefing at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and a plane ticket that he could use to go anywhere in the country. Later, Dahmer told police he didn't think he could face his father at home, so he went to Miami Beach, Florida, because he was tired of the cold and wanted to try to live on his own. Dahmer moved to Florida and got a job at a delicatessen. He also rented a room at a motel nearby. Dahmer spent most of his money on alcohol and was soon kicked out of the motel for not paying. He spent his evenings at the beach while working at the sandwich shop until September of that year, when he called his father and asked to go back to Ohio.
Return to Ohio. and relocation to West Allis, Wisconsin.
Jeffrey Dahmer lived with his father and stepmother when he first moved back to Ohio. He insisted on being given a lot of chores to do while he looked for work. He kept drinking a lot. And 2 weeks after he got back, Dahmer was arrested for being drunk and acting disorderly. He was fined $60 and given a 10-day suspended jail sentence. Dahmer's father tried to get his son to stop drinking, but he was not successful. He and Dahmer's stepmother sent him to West Allis, Wisconsin, to live with his grandmother in December 1981. Dahmer only liked his grandmother. They hoped that her influence and the move would get him to stop drinking, get a job, and live a normal life. At first, Dahmer got along well with his grandmother. He went to church with her, did chores without being asked, looked for work, and followed most of her rules, though he continued to drink and smoke. In early 1982, Dahmer got a job as a phlebotomist at the Milwaukee Blood Plasma Center. He worked at this job for a total of 10 months before he was fired. Dahmer was out of work for more than 2 years and lived off the money his grandmother gave him. Dahmer was arrested for indecent exposure just before he lost his job. On August 8, 1982, 25 people, including women and children, saw him exposing himself on the south side of the Coliseum at the Wisconsin State Fair Park. For this, he was found guilty and fined $50, plus court costs. Dahmer got a job as a mixer at the Milwaukee Ambrosia Chocolate Factory in January 1985. He worked there from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. 6 nights a week, with Saturday nights off. Not long after Dahmer got this job, he was approached by another man while he was reading in the West Allis Public Library. The stranger threw a note to Dahmer, saying that he would do fellatio on him. Even though Dahmer didn't answer, the event made him think about his control and dominance fantasies from when he was a teenager, and he started to get to know Milwaukee's gay bars, gay bathhouses, and gay bookstores. He also stole a male mannequin from a store and used it for sexual pleasure until his grandmother found it in his closet and told him to get rid of it. By the end of 1985, Dahmer was going to the bathhouses regularly. He later said that they were relaxing places, but when he was having sexual encounters, he got angry when his partners moved around. After he was arrested, he said, "I trained myself to see people as objects of pleasure instead of as people." Because of this, he started giving his partners sleeping pills and alcohol with sedatives in it in June 1986. He then waited for his partner to fall asleep before doing different sexual acts. To make sure he had enough of this medication, Dahmer told doctors he worked nights and needed the pills to fit his schedule. After about 12 of these incidents, the bathhouse's management took away Dahmer's membership, so he started doing this in hotel rooms. Soon after his bathhouse memberships were taken away, Dahmer read in a newspaper that an 18-year-old man's funeral was coming up. He thought about stealing the freshly buried body and taking it home. Dahmer said that he tried to dig up the coffin, but the ground was too hard, so he gave up on the plan. On September 8, 1986, Dahmer was arrested on a charge of lewd and lascivious behavior for masturbating in front of two 12-year-old boys as he stood near the Kinnickinnic River. At first, he said he had been urinating and didn't know there were witnesses. But he soon admitted to the crime. The charge was changed to disorderly conduct. And on March 10, 1987, Dahmer was sentenced to 1 year of probation with additional instruction.